Fun. Welcome, everybody. Today is our first inaugural episode of Wealth Architecture with Jason Safford and Bruce Wernick. I am your co-host, Jason Safford, founder of Exceptional Results Now and author of Winning with Exceptionalism. And I am excited to introduce my co-host, Bruce Wernick of Wernick Financial Services. Bruce, give them your details.
Hey, Jason, how are you? I'm so excited to be here as well. Thank you for orchestrating this. I'm so glad that we came together and collaborated in putting this together. It's been a long time coming, and I'm just so happy that we're doing this. This is going to be great. So as you know, my name is Bruce Wernick, and I'm a certified family business specialist, a CFBS. And so I try not to put so much emphasis on the BS, but more on the family planning, as we've talked about. And what I basically do is I work with individuals and business owners, and I help to transfer their businesses and their wealth and their everything that they've worked for through their whole life to get to the place where they are, and getting them to that place is help people get what they need to do, get to a point where they can transfer their wealth to a family member, to someone who's buying a business. We do it in the most tax efficient manner. And I think that's what's the thing that really we need to focus on, is the way to do that.
Awesome. So for our listeners, Bruce, one of the reasons why we created this show is because the idea of wealth architecture, which to me is based on three pillars: your health, your relationships, and your resources. For a lot of people, they think of wealth as just money in the bank. And you and I have had several conversations about this, that, if you think of wealth as just money in the bank, oftentimes you're going to run out of money before you know it. And
Right.
it's really about how you develop your life and design your life, exactly as you just said, and plan certain things so that as you accumulate both resources and develop relationships, as well as grow your family, you're able to, meet people where they are, as well as circumstances and life events, because things are never static. So one of the things that I want to ask you is that, for somebody who doesn't really understand this concept of wealth, let's start with the basics. How do you go about just beginning an idea, in your head and putting it down on paper to create a wealth plan?
But that's a great question. So the way I look at it is that, you can never be too early to start this. And one of the things I always advise a lot of my clients to do, and a lot of them take this idea and they grasp it, they go with it, is let's get a foundation going. What's the foundation? Well, like the pyramids were built, they needed a big foundation to be built. If we look at the pyramids of wealth, what you need basically is a strong foundation. And what I always talk to my clients about is how are you setting your foundation up? You don't want there to be any cracks in it, so everything's going to tumble or fall. You want the foundation to be set, and going not only at different stages of your life. Like I said, the one thing I suggest to my clients is let's get the ball rolling to your client, to your children when they're young. We want to make sure that they understand. Like you said, wealth not necessarily doesn't mean how much money in the bank. It's how healthy you are physically, how healthy you are mentally, and that all is part of that foundation. I always like to tell my clients, you should get something, you should always put things in line for your children so that they can start learning what the blueprint and the foundations for their own financial security.
I like that. If I understand what you're saying, and this is something that I actually do, and you and I worked on this, is modeling. So the more that you develop good behaviors and model them to the people around you, so that they almost ask you, Bruce, what's your secret? How do you, like I've actually had lots of people lately say, what's your secret? How do you stay so young and so energetic and so vibrant? And, a part of that is both my natural attitude, never wanting to not be a kid, but also now having kids, the way in which they, generate energy, they make me want to stay young and, meet them where they are.
Exactly. And the modeling is so important, especially when it comes to spending, and when it comes to where you are in your lifestyle with your children. You want to make sure you give them everything that you can have, but you don't want to overdo it. And this is one of the key points to the modeling that I like to emphasize that we talked about is, especially now, during 2020 has been a tough year. And you can't really give your kids everything that they wanted this year. The best thing we can give them is safety and security and sound mind. And while it's good to be able to provide them with the toys, the latest gadgets, and the latest things, but you don't want to get them the top of the line thing right now, because what do they have to look forward to? And you also want to present it to them in a way that they see the value behind it. There's a big difference between cost and price. The cost of something is what it is, but the price of what it is and what you learn from it and where it takes you down the road is tremendous. So.
Let's explore that a little more, Bruce. I really like that, especially, if I'm a listener and I don't understand the value of, saving versus spending. If I have, an income right now, I'm making less than $5,000 a month, and I've got, maybe $500 left at the end of the month after I pay all my bills. I've got $500, and I've got all these holidays, and I could save that money and go into next year, or I could spend it on my kids, my family, my friends. How do I make good decisions in terms of that money, so that it's really being put to best use in terms of both my financial future, my wealth building, my design, as
Right.
well as making sure I'm taking care of, people today?
Well, what we like to, we like to tell people, to our clients, is that, at the end of the month, what do you have, more month, or do you have more money? We want to make sure that
Great question. I love that.
Exactly. So, do you have, and those who have more month than they have money, we need to figure out, we go back in and figure out where is things that you're spending on. What can we cut back on? Don't necessarily go buy don't buy the soda if you're not buying the value. You don't see the value on it. You don't see the price if it's not a sale on it. Don't get those. Don't get that loaf of bread this week that you usually get because it's not on sale. You have to be a little bit thrifty, and it's not being poor, and it's not being and cost conscious is not being poor, and it's proper planning. It's how do you plan for what's going to take place next year, next week, next month, next year, because we want to make sure, like you said, that $500 that you have is there for when you need it. Mm-hmm. People, thank God, have been having they have their income. People have incomes, but maybe you lose your income. I mean, the true tested rule is you always want to have 6 months of savings put away just in case of emergency, your emergency fund. It's so true, but yet, even if you have that put away and you have that $500 still left over, no one says you have to spend that. Mm-hmm. You don't need that money burned in your pocket, burning a hole in your pocket. But you feel like you want to do something special for your family and for your kids with that money, you can do something really small. Things don't have to be so elaborate or so gargantuous that you have to make people happy. I mean, I always like to go back to the KISS philosophy, where we keep it simple, right? where you want to just, sometimes people get the greatest joys out of the smallest things. Perfect example, my oldest son can't get him off his device, can't get him off the play. And it snowed here a couple of days ago, and we wanted to go sledding. And he was, I don't want to do that. It's miserable. I don't want to do it because it's not device appropriate, not time for him to play on the device.
He doesn't want to unplug.
Exactly. So I finally was able to get him to go, and he was miserable. And then by the time we were there, I couldn't get him off the mountain. He just kept wanting to go. So, and by the way, and that was a free activity. We found the hill somewhere, and we just went and did it. We didn't have to go to flight simulator. We didn't have to go to a ski simulator. We took advantage of what was available to us.
That's a great segue when you think about it, going back to, building a foundation rock solid and understanding that there are so many resources out there that you actually do have access to that don't cost you any money.
Right.
Parks and, libraries and different charitable organizations that are providing resources for you to really tap into and build this life in a fundamentally sound way, so that when you do have money beyond your bills and beyond your financial security to spend, you realize that you still don't have to spend it unless you truly need to or want to do it as a gift.
Exactly. And like I send out a newsletter every 2 weeks of activities to do around the area. And a lot of them are free activities. A lot of them are Zoom activities. A lot of them are family activities. For example, this last Thursday night we had there was a lighting at with Beethoven that you can Zoom and you can watch and you gather the family around to do it. Okay, so it's connected, and it's a technology aspect, but it's also a safe thing to do, and it's something you can do together. Go roast, turn the flame on the stove. Go get some marshmallows and roast them up, and just watch the activities with the family.
So let's get back to, I want to move forward, on this foundation building, idea of wealth, and, thinking about access to resources and what's available to you where you don't have to spend a lot of money is really important. But especially going into 2021, we've just lived through, and we're still living through, but we see the end of a worldwide pandemic. And, growing forward out of this experience, there are a whole lot of opportunities for people who are just at the beginning, but there are also lots of opportunities for people who have lots and lots of resources now to protect. And one of the things that I have learned from experience is that when you learn from somebody who already has a lot and they show you how to protect what they have, it helps you to really think about how to acquire things in a step-by-step process,
right,
and protect it along the way. So how do we think about building wealth from a protection point of view?
Well, we need to, when we look at it as a protection aspect, and as part of that foundation, so you want to look at things that may not be here tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people say, well, we'll put stuff in the stock market, or we'll buy real estate, or we'll buy. These are things that are very tried and true, and very have been positive performing assets down the road in the past. But we don't know what's going to happen down the road. There are vehicles out there that are around that give you guarantees and protection, and those are things that I would definitely and highly recommend looking into and exploring, whether it be a life insurance policy, or whether it be some sort of annuity or something like that. And there has been people say, oh, but I don't want this. I don't want. Who cares what it's called? Who cares if it's a life insurance policy? Who cares if it's an annuity or a stock, we need to look at it as a way to reposition it as your protection plan. What are you going to call it? It doesn't matter.
Okay.
You just want to make sure that there is something in place to protect your assets, something in place to protect if you what would happen if you didn't show up tomorrow from work.
Right.
So this is one of the foundations that we talked about is what are we utilizing to protect ourselves, protect our assets.
Right.
Well, right now we are entering new time with the new year coming in, and we have a new administration coming in. We don't know. There's a lot of unknowns out there. We do know today that the estate taxes, the taxes when you die federally, are at a all-time high threshold, which is scheduled to sunset in 2026. And that was part of the current administration. Now, the new administration coming in, their policy is to lower that threshold. The threshold right now is 26 million husband and wife. Mm-hmm. They want to, and probably need to lower it because there are a lot of bills that the government needs to cover. So they're looking as a great way of a source of income is to tax the when someone dies. And this isn't a political statement, and I'm not trying to go right or left. I'm just trying to state the facts. But there's going to be monies need to come in to pay the coffers, and one of the ways that has been traditionally done is through the estate taxes. Mm-hmm. Now, in the state that I live in, New York, the state income tax threshold is just under $12 million, husband and wife. Mm-hmm. So if you have an estate that's just under $12 million, you're free of having to pay any state income tax. Federally, it's around 26 million. Now they're looking to lower the state tax, that threshold, to 5 million, 6 million. So okay. We're talking about how are we protecting our assets. One of the main ways we need to protect it is what happens. Like I said, if someone dies, you'd hate to have to sell positive performing asset to go cover those taxes.
Right.
So how do you've got money in the stock market that's doing great, but now your family's got to sell some of it to go cover some taxes. Mm-hmm. Or you have a building that's been doing very well. Now we have to sell the building to go cover the taxes on death of Papa. Mm-hmm. So this is part of the planning that we do. We talk about this sort of planning and how we can make sure that this doesn't get out of hand and that we're properly prepared for tomorrow. And like we the old saying is that people who don't plan to fail, they just fail to plan.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that the planning is done.
Yeah, let's use that statement. People don't plan to fail. They fail to plan, and that's because they don't have a plan. And one of the things about poor planning is poor relationships, poor advice, poor coaching, poor discipline. Right. So all of these things are why you don't have a plan in place. So let's start with relationships first, and let's actually examine people's relationship with money. So again, one of the things about wealth architecture is it's, 3 pillars: health, relationships, and resources. Obviously your financial health has to do with you making an income and having enough money at the end of the month, not having more month,
right,
than money. So that's your financial health right there, is getting into a position. And if you have more month than money, exactly as you said, you really have to examine what your spending habits are, as well as what you really need to live on,
right,
and afford.
Right. A lot of times people aren't honest with themselves.
Okay.
And that's why it's important to have an outside party such as myself or another advisor, come in and help you go through on an annually basis. Like I meet with my clients this time at the end of the year is the best time that I meet with a lot of my clients because we're actually setting plans for the next year. Where do we want to do? Where are we looking to what quarters are going to be good for them? What quarters will be bad for them? Traditionally in the past, and how can we overcome some of those shortfalls? What are we doing to make sure that's taken care of?
I have a question for you, Bruce, and this is more just from the standpoint of someone starting out, but also someone who has a great deal of experience in planning. What should somebody be doing on a monthly basis if they set a plan with you? On a monthly basis, do they check in with you? How do they check in with themselves or with somebody else in a way that is accountable for them? How do they develop that discipline?
Well, one thing that we like to do with our clients is once to set the budget up, set a budget, and we'll set it. We'll come in and we do a needs analysis. We at the very beginning of our relationship, we sit down with them and we go through what are your needs, what are your goals, what are your visions, where do you want to see yourself in 5, 10, 15 years? And how are you planning to get there? A goal that's not written down is just a thought, right? Or it's just an idea. So I like to make sure that they write it down in their words. What do they want to do? So it's important for someone to find someone who they're comfortable with, someone who they're able to communicate with, and they are able to reveal their information and not hold anything back. Because again, if you're working with someone like me, or you're working with me, and you're not telling me and revealing all the information that we need to provide the proper information, you're not hurting us. You're not hurting me. You're hurting yourself.
Yeah.
And you really need to set the goals and be clear and succinct in them. Do they meet with the person every month? It may be a little at first, yes, but after a while, I think it become very, in my situation, to meet with them to make sure that they're on track. What I like to do is meet with my clients quarterly. I'll touch base with them at least once a quarter just to see how things are going. Are we still on track? Are we still after our initial meeting to make sure that things are still going where they need to? Is there a hiccup does little Johnny need to go get braces now? How are we going to find the money to go get braces? Oh, there's a hole in the roof. What do we do to take care of that? And then we have to make some adjustments. So, look, the one thing that 2020 has taught me a new word, and that's fluid. Everything's fluid. We don't know what happened. And little did I know, but that's been my career. Not just me personally, but working with my clients. Our relationship is fluid.
Yeah.
Meaning things change on a daily basis. I've met with a client a couple of weeks ago who was in a position in a plan and position that their life insurance policy had collapsed on them, and honestly, it was sold to them by someone else, but it did what it was supposed to do. But here's the key: nobody met with them within the last 10 years to say this policy is not going to last as long as you are. We need to fix this. We need to go in and take care of it.
Yeah.
So that's part of that relationship that you have with the person you're working with. How do you make sure that everything is still in order as things change in our lives?
Bruce, it brings up a point that you and I understand as entrepreneurs and self-employed businessmen, but for people out there who have never delved into running their own business, or even people who have their own businesses and have just never recognized the importance of having a team to help you and having people to help you focus on areas, because I think that one of the biggest issues with designing your wealth journey is fear.
Right.
And you deal with it with a lot of people. I want you to tell me your experience in how somebody comes to you and their initial fear and how you help them, overcome their own fears about what wealth is, and really, how they not only protect their assets, but grow their assets by having a better understanding of not only why they're protecting them, but why that protection makes it easier for them to grow
Right.
their assets for other people.
Exactly. And I think the fear that you mentioned, I mean, it happens a lot of times. And my main job, my main goal, I like to look at as myself as more as an educator. And it's not just for me to educate the client. I also educate, believe it or not, I'll talk to their attorneys. I talk to their CPAs. And this is part of the team that you mentioned. We're all on this team together, and making sure that we're all driving on the same goal to bring this wealth and sustain this wealth multi-generationally to my clients and to their family. A lot of times, like you said, someone who's built their business and has taken it to a certain level, when they pass it on to their children, they don't have that same sort of drive. Their children, they don't have, because everything's been given to them. So my biggest obstacle is getting that fire in the belly of the children to still get that going. There's studies that show that family businesses don't last past 3 generations.
Wow, that's a very, very valuable thing to recognize. And what do you think is the number one reason, or do they tell you what is the number one reason why family businesses fail after 3 generations, or they get sold? I imagine
they get sold. They don't last. One of the main reasons is you have too many siblings and offsprings of family generations who want $250,000 salaries, but the business doesn't sustain $250,000 salaries for 10 people.
And from that standpoint, let's step back and look at again, asset protection versus giving. So if I'm building my wealth and my assets, and I have to look at the future of how these assets are going to produce wealth, it sounds like I also have to protect these assets from my offspring and from future generations choices, or their desires for things from these assets that may not be sustainable or even truthfully possible without damaging the health of the asset.
Right.
So so we're protecting the health of the assets as much as, and we have to think about that, as much as we want to pass these assets on and these resources on to future generations.
Right. I think the main thing that has to be done, and it starts like we talked about earlier, is the education to the children and preparing them and the modeling for them. All right. And now, so that's one phase. But the other phase is the seniors who are running the business, and the brothers who are the partners of the business who are running it. They need to have it written down. It has to be written down and spelled out the directions in which they need it to go. They want to go forward, and this direction should be reviewed and gone over every 2 to 3 years.
So if I understand you correctly, and we're coming to our time here, but in designing our wealth plan, really beginning our wealth journey, no matter what age we are, the first thing we have to do is we have to think about how we model it to the people around us and future generations. And in order to do that, we have to write it down. We have to actually create a template plan and fill in the details as we go along. And the more that we build that plan on paper and model it to people around us is the more that our family, our friends, the people that, even our business associates, the people that work for us, everybody is going to start to gain the vision that we have from our body language, the things that we do with executing our own plan. So,
Right.
so if I were to summarize this first episode, it really is about becoming a source of health in a financial capacity where you are, designing the vision, the plan for the future for other people to gain health from your own commitment to being healthy, both physically, financially, mentally, spiritually.
Right.
All of these things have to be written down and carried out in order for you to be able to have something to protect going forward.
Exactly. And I say this all the time. Either we no one likes to write things down anymore because everything's all digital. So do it in your phone. It doesn't have to be pen to paper. It could be thumb to keyboard. Just nothing's going to happen unless you write it down and you set it down, because when it's written down, it becomes concrete.
Bruce, what's the best way for people to find you?
So best way for me to connect with me is either through LinkedIn, Bruce Wernick on LinkedIn, or I have a link to that on my website, which is planprotectgrow.info.
Awesome.
That's my website. It's a good place to reach out for me. I have marks there if you want to reach out through Facebook or Twitter or through LinkedIn. It's a great place. I've got great resources there for everybody, and some other videos for everybody to watch.
Yep. And obviously you can access Bruce through exceptionalresultsnow.com, because we'll have his email and information there. You'll be able to get any one of our coaches as a resource for whatever your business or life needs are. You'll see this podcast on YouTube, as well as all of our other channels. And again, I'm Jason Safford, founder and co-host of this podcast, founder of Exceptional Results Now and author of Winning with Exceptionalism. And we're delighted to have you guys tuning in, and we look forward to lots of exciting conversations with Bruce in the future. And next week we're going to get into, really some of the tools for asset protection. Bruce, I'm really interested to hear more about some of the best ways to think about protecting what you have and then being able to grow it. So
sounds good. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Jason.
Yep. Have a great Sunday. Awesome to see you, man.
Thank you. You too. Be well. Enjoy the day.